Who is the scariest or creepiest human you've encountered? An acquaintance from high school and I met up one night to discuss holding an intervention for a mutual friend. He ended up running his hands over me, whispering, "Slice, slice, 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 slice." You know, normally when I think about killing people, I do it with 7 cuts. I do 8 cuts with you, and I like that symmetry. He later apologized with a note a friend passed on to me, also mentioning that he started taking medication since that night. I forgive him, but I still really don't want to be in the same building as him. I always leave if I see him. I used to work for a futon company in college. I delivered and set up a futon to a guy in a rather nice high-rise. He met us downstairs and instantly the creep factor was through the roof. The guy was medium height with a frail frame. He was about the palest human being I've ever met with long gray unkempt hair. This was in a city along the Gulf Coast where it is short weather year-long. You would really have to try to be as pale as this guy. You would have to avoid the sun at every possible opportunity. He looked like a vampire. He stank of cigarettes like no one else I've met. He spoke very little and could tell wanted us gone as soon as humanly possible. He leads us to his apartment and inside we find no furniture and lots of Barbie dolls. I mean hundreds of them. He had no bookshelves or display furniture, so they were just leaned up against the walls and on the countertops, etc. They were everywhere, and again, not a bed, not an entertainment center, not a couch or even a chair. He also had a lot of Barbie accessories such as the cravat. I don't really recall all of it. He had to be there for some time at least because the apartment stank like you wouldn't believe of cigarettes, and all the curtains were drawn so that it was almost pitch black in there. It wasn't the fresh, recently smoked cigarette smell either. It was the musty stink that had sunk in the walls and carpet, the kind of stink that you won't get out. You'll just have to replace everything. How long had he lived there like that? He was very sheepish and not comfortable with us being there, and neither were we. My partner and I assembled his futon and got the hell out of there. The odd thing was, the high-rise was a pretty nice bit of real estate. It wasn't luxury, but very nice. It had to be expensive to live there. How does a guy like that have the money to live in a place like that? I was in a holding area for minors that needed to be taken out of society for a few days. It was one room with a couch, a TV, and a table and chairs. It was nice. Met a girl and she asked me to braid her hair. I was braiding her hair and asked her why she was there. Some kids were there for drug withdrawals, physically fighting a parent, or suicide. She said she got caught planning a school shooting and gave me a detailed rundown on how her friends and her were trying to take out as many kids as possible then kill themselves. I used to work with a guy who didn't have normal human reactions to things. He didn't nod as he spoke, say the usual have regular facial expressions, anything. He just blankly stared at you. When you were done talking, he sometimes wouldn't say anything. He would just turn and leave. The running joke was that he had a bunch of bodies buried in his basement. One day, I walked by him and he stared at me as I walked by and didn't say anything, staring blankly. I was confused and turned around and he was still 20 feet away. I turned and he was still in front of me as well. He had a twin, just as creepy as him, double the basement bodies. A notorious murderer in my city was actually a security guard at the company where I worked before he was identified and caught. After he was apprehended, we discovered that he had kept the body of a small child in a cold water tank on the premises, just a few tens of yards away from where we worked. It had been there 2 years or so, but was never found or even suspected until the handle had given the information to the police. The man is still in jail nearly 25 years later. It has since been proven with DNA that he was actually responsible for several area murders. He is serving compound life sentences. He actually was very friendly with me and with my colleagues as we came in and out of the building every day. He smiled and joked with everyone. In fact, the two of us had an ongoing morning gag. While he still worked there and well before his crimes were discovered, my baby daughter was born. My wife and I brought her into the office to show her off. I let this security guard, who was the father of an 8-year-old himself, hold the baby as the body of a toddler he murdered a few months before lay decomposing a couple of rooms away. When he gently handed my daughter back to me, doing so as perfectly well as any experienced parent would, he told me she was beautiful and that I must be proud. I sure was. He held my baby. Dear God, he held my baby. The last time I went back to my home state with my fiancé, boyfriend at the time, I introduced him to my friends and we went out to a park at 1 a.m. This was something we used to do very often, just to swing and chat. It was super relaxing. This time, we were around a town that I wasn't crazy familiar with. My father had just moved there. We were staying with him. It was right near the state capital and a pretty affluent area, so it wasn't too risky. We were swinging and talking about when I wanted to go back because we had to fly back the next morning. This young girl starts walking towards us and we notice she's humming a song, super creepy, like straight out of the movie. She doesn't say anything, just sits down on a swing next to us. We go a little silent until someone says, "It's late, we should go." We walk away really slow so it doesn't seem like we're running away. She starts to follow us, but I'm the only one to notice since everyone is just walking forward. She stops at the edge of the playground and just watched us for a few seconds before leaving the playground. Crazy, scary stuff. My heart was beating out of my chest. She was alone at like 1:30 in the morning at a park. Why would you be alone? When I was around 11 or 12, my aunt drove me down to get some chips from a corner shop near where I used to live. She stayed in the car while I crossed the little car park to the shop. Everything went fine. I walked back out and a car reversed into me and hit me in the hip. I was fine. It was just a little bump, but my aunt burst out of her car and ran after the one that hit me. She slammed her hand down onto it and demanded them to apologize. Out come this old couple and they start walking over to me, and for some reason I couldn't look the man who was driving in the eyes. I don't know what it was, but he made me extremely uncomfortable. He was tall for an old man, that I remember, and his stomach was bulbous and protruding 2 paces before him. The wife, I'm assuming, was making a big scene saying how sorry she was, and my aunt was too preoccupied with yelling at her to not see the man staring at me. Not an absent-minded stare, but a hate-filled one. I've heard the expression where you can feel someone's eyes are burning into your back. This was the same, but instead of my back, it was into my eyes, as if he was trying to get me to look at him. I eventually did because it was too awkward to avoid it, and when I did, his face shifted into a mocking expression and his hand went to my neck. My aunt was still too busy arguing with the wife to notice. His grip got tighter and he said something along the lines of how sorry he was and that he could have killed me. I remember the soles of my feet lifting the ground, and as quick as he grabbed me, he let me go. Without blinking, his eyes locked on my aunt and he apologized again, more sincere sounding, and grabbed his wife to leave, and they swiftly did. Nothing terrible happened. I've met people who have done worse physically, but there was something so strange and sinister about that interaction. I didn't tell my aunt. I couldn't really make sense of it myself anyway. Just some creepy old man who didn't know how to say sorry? Thankfully, I'll never really know. One night, I went out to a club with friends. Had a great night. My friend and I were hungry, so we stopped at a food place. This was like 6 a.m. She went in to buy the food and I sat in the car waiting. I see this dirty African man walking and shouting and cursing in his language. From far, it looks like he has a stick in hand, almost like a short version of a walking stick, and he's pointing it at people and swinging it around. As he is about to walk past my car, I realize he looks like a very dirty, crazy witch doctor. The stick was a dead black cat that was stiff from rigor mortis, and the horror on the cat's face. The mouth was open like a scream and the eyes were wide open. I don't want to even think what horror that cat went through in its last moments. It was the most shocking thing I had ever seen. Creeped me out so badly. This happened in South Africa. I can still see that cat's face. This was like 9 years ago. I was at a big library down in my city once, visiting my boyfriend who worked there. I went to go look at the books by myself and ended up getting approached by this complete stranger. He asked if we had met and started asking all kinds of questions about where I was going to school and where I'm from. He got super forward and started asking me to go out with him right then and there. I told him I had a boyfriend and that he was downstairs, but he just kept saying, "He can't be as good to you as I could be. There's no way he deserves you. He can't be as good looking as me. You're just making him up, aren't you?" I've been creepy hit on before, so I was really just trying to get out of the situation. But it was when his come-ons turned into weird threats that it got creepy. "Come on, give me your number." I don't really like to give my number away to people I don't know. "Give me your Facebook, then I'll know you." I don't know about that. "What? Are you afraid I'll stalk you?" Look at you though. I'd love to stalk you. Come on, just give me your number. Telling someone you're going to stalk them is not a great way to get their number. "Well, give me your number so I don't have to." I managed to separate myself from him, but it felt like he was following me the whole time. I almost sprinted back to my boyfriend's office, told him I thought I was being followed. He got really serious, didn't even ask for any details, wrapped his arms around me and personally escorted me to my car, plus 1,000 boyfriend points. I was never so freaked out by a guy before in my life. I'm really late, but I want to say this story because it is relatively recent. My neighbor has really been creeping my family out lately. There have been many instances that have made us really unnerved. The first instance was this past summer. My family recently got a huge pool installed in the backyard, so of course we were out there almost every day this summer. My 15-year-old sister was having a pool party with a bunch of her volleyball teammates. Some of the parents were also over and we were all hanging out in the backyard. Then my mom sees something in my neighbor's second-story window that faces our backyard perfectly. She sees the blinds move up about a quarter of the way up, and my neighbor starts cleaning the corner of the window and only that small corner. This of course angers my dad and some of the parents and also me, being the protective older brother that I am. We moved the party inside, and then after everyone left, my mom called a family friend who is also a detective and asked if anything can be done, but nothing could. Over the course of the summer, the blinds never closed and we always feared he would watch up whenever we were outside swimming. Later on, we noticed other odd things about my neighbor. We are eating one day and I happen to look out the window from the dining room and see my neighbor in his car just constantly staring at us through our window. He is staring and not breaking his gaze even after we all look at him in the eyes and let him know we see him. We now keep the blinds down anytime we are eating. Some of the stranger things we notice him doing is that he will only do yard work or garage work late at night, like 11 or 12 at night. He will go out and plant plants, trim trees, or other typical yard work, but only at night, never during the day. Also, anytime I see him in public, he always stares at me and very intently watches me and my family. He creeps me out every time I see him, and I'm just hoping he isn't some serial killer or something. I was on the train one late night after my shift at the hospital, and this old lady who was presumably sleeping woke up as I sat across her. She had super glazed eyes and then started going, "Little girl, you can't sit there, he's sitting there." Mind you, nobody was in this train car. And then she continued to go, little girl. I'm a 5 feet 22-year-old woman. I ignored her because I was only a few stops away, and then all of a sudden she started screaming at the top of her lungs, "Little girl, get off this train, train." And I ran out of there in the next 2 minutes as the train stopped.